Hello and welcome to Ben Omtad, a podcast of open-minded thought and discussion. Here I recount and discuss folk tales, myths, and philosophy with various people, hoping to grow through dialogue and bring forth truth, wisdom, and insight in the interaction. Yes, hello. I'm here with Ian, and we're going to summarize the Franz Xavier von Schönwerth folktale, "The Red Silk Ribbon," translated by Maria Tater. Um, yeah, I wanted to. I like that you turned me onto this book, Ian. I hadn't known of von Schönwerth before this. But it's kind of I wanted to note that her his stories and also her English translation of his stories are kind of supposed to be unedited, kind of non-softened translations. They maybe have more violence and they're sort of less sort of appropriate for children than like some stories, like some collections like the Grimm Brothers story. So I don't these aren't nearly as well known as the Grimm brothers and maybe some other folk tales, but I like these and I think they're they're interesting. They have a lot of stuff in them.
Yeah, I like them too. There's a lot of flavor. I found the book. Um, I found the book in Powell's here in Portland. It's a famous bookstore. Just in their, fairy mythology folktale section, and I was going to ignore it, and then it says newly discovered fairy tales is sort of the subtitle, and I was like, well, how do you have newly discovered stuff from centuries ago? And it turns out they found a box of his work in, let's see, in the 18 no, he was working in the 1850s, and they found a box of his work in a municipal archive in Germany only a few years ago from the publishing of this book. So it's pretty cool that it's this like lost trove of tales that have resurrected themselves for our times.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean, that's the advantage of writing is that, from the mouths of the people he collected it from, he wrote it down and then it was lost and we found them because they were written down.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is from another person in this one from mythology who had big problems with the sea, and we kind of thought we'd read this little summoning of the Muse from Homer for Odysseus. The man for wisdom's various arts renowned, long exercised in woes, O Muse, resound who, when his arms had wrought the destined fall of sacred Troy and raised her heaven-built wall, wandering from clime to clime, observant, strayed, their manners noted and their states surveyed, on stormy seas unnumbered toils he bore, safe with his friends to gain his natal shore. Vain toils, their impious folly dared to prey on herds devoted to the god of day. The God vindictive doomed them nevermore. Ah, man unblessed, to touch that natal shore. Oh, snatch some portion of these acts from fate, celestial muse, and to our world relate. So that was just a little bit from Alexander Pope's Odysseus. And so I guess I'll just give a summary of the story and we'll kind of talk about it. So
Sure.
this is
Yeah. I just want to quickly say I love the invocation of the muses. Anytime we can do some invocations, I'm all for that. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of got the idea from like the Dionysus episode, and
Oh
yeah, it's
yeah.
kind of like that little bit of a sacred or a little bit of invocation flavor.
Yeah. I like it. So you had a summary of our would-be adventurer in this story. Uh, so
Yeah. So before the Red Silk Ribbon by Schonwerth, he gives a note and he kind of mentions mermaids are highly evolved feminine creatures that dwell in the water but are not restricted to it. They long for the love of handsome men and draw them down into their world and thrive on the vitality of humans. So the story goes like this. There's a fisherman that's employed by a count that paid him well for how big his catches were. He suddenly stopped catching fish and he lost the employment. So he sat out on the water weeping, and a mermaid came to him and said she was the one who gave him all the fish and then took them away, and that if he wanted more, he'd have to give her something he didn't know he had. And he agreed, and then he caught a large load. He went home and he shocked his wife with the news, and she told him something that he did not know that they had, that she was with child. They were saddened, but said they'd make the boy be a man of the cloth, and they comforted themselves with the catch, which the man then brought to the count, and he became reemployed. Now, when the boy, whom they named Lucas, was of age, he took the vows, but he could not perform his first sermon because he had been promised to the mermaid. So he made a copper, excuse me, he became a cooper, which is like a maker and repairer of casks and tubs, kind of containers for liquid, containers
Barrels.
for
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
And he went on the road with that. So on the road one day, he saw a bear, a fox, a falcon, and an ant quarreling over how to divide a horse's carcass. Now, Lucas gave the fore and the hindquarters to the bear, the back to the fox, the innards to the falcon, and the head to the ant. And he started walking away, but the bear sent the fox after him to express their gratitude. And the animals gave him the power to change into any of their forms at will. He burst out laughing, and he went on. To test his power, when he came upon some partridges pecking at grain, Lucas turned into a fox and got as many of the birds as he could carry. He then went on and came to an inn where he had the birds roasted. After he went to sleep behind the stove, four men entered and started playing cards, and one amassed quite a small fortune. Lucas then became an ant, crawled over, transformed into a bear, and overturned the table, scattering the money and frightening the card players into fleeing. So Lucas took his catch back on the road and came to a town with a black flag and people in mourning. A king had three beautiful daughters and had decided to make the middle his heir, but the sisters looked so alike that people could not tell them apart. Anyone who could choose the middle could marry her, but if he failed, he'd be executed. So many had tried unsuccessfully, and that was why the town was in mourning. Lucas decided to try his hand, and he espied the castle, which was surrounded by a deep moat, and there was in it a garden, and in that three beautiful girls. He flew as a falcon into it and allowed one of the girls to capture him. She put him into a golden cage in her room and went to sleep. And he emerged as a man in splendid clothing and took her hand. He professed his love to her, and she said she was the middle daughter. She tied a red silk ribbon around her finger that she would use to distinguish her from her sisters. The next day, Lucas showed up at the castle to claim his bride. The king and others mourned for this handsome lad to be the next victim of the executioner, who was getting ready off to the side. But when the three daughters were presented, the middle stepped forward slightly, and he saw the ribbon. Everyone rejoiced at his pick, and he was made heir, and they lived together happily for years. One day, Lucas wanted to go off hunting, but his wife had a bad premonition and asked him not to go, but he insisted. Carrying a deer that he'd killed, he ignored his mother's warning to stay away from water, and he was snatched below by a mermaid. The wife heard the news and mourned him at the stream, and the mermaid came up and said not to worry, that he was happy. She asked to see her husband, and she was shown his face. She she offered her golden comb to be shown his face, and then by giving away her ring and then her slipper, he was allowed to progressively emerge until he was in his wife's hand. And believe it or not, he then turned into a falcon and escaped. The mermaid disappeared and came back and blew sand into the face of the queen, who then turned into a dragon. So the kingdom was again in trouble, and the king announced the need for help throughout the land. A magician came and asked if the princess could endure the difficult cure. So they procured 3 ovens of progressive heat, and she was put into one, which she then emerged from with soft skin. And then with the second oven, she split out of that skin. And then with the third oven, she was naked as herself. And each time between the ovens, she was cooled with water. Lucas threw his cape on her, and they lived happily ever after, now that the mermaid no longer had claim to them. So that was the Red Silk Ribbon by Schonwerth.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a wandering tale. I mean, it's not quite as intense as Odysseus, but it definitely um you would think it would stop when they were married, with the
Yeah.
happily ever after, but it hasn't resolved the mermaid thing, so that has to come through.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they made a deal. Or his father made a deal with the mermaid, so can't just
Yeah.
renege on that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Although that is an interesting place to start. But before we dive in, did you have anything you wanted to say about sort of overall or up front?
Not really. Yeah. Do you want to just go through the tale just kind of from the beginning and kind of talk about it from there? I
Yeah,
have some comparisons and of course, different thoughts, but
yeah, yeah. We'll see where it goes. Well, you were saying the deal with the mermaid, and that was one of the first things that sort of caught my attention was you have because my first read through, I was like, oh man, they make a deal with this mermaid, and then they immediately decide to like renege on it. Like they're like, well, whatever, we'll just baptize the kid and then the mermaid can't touch him. But we'll still take the fish. We'll still be very happy about the result, her side of the bargain, but we have
yeah.
no intention of honoring her. But then on the second time reading through, I noticed that the mermaid says, oh, I was the one that was sending you all the fish, and now I'm not sending you the fish. And if you want the fish, you have to give me the thing you don't know you have. So
Yeah.
she's already sort of playing badly. Like she's not playing fairly there. She's like, well, I want a thing, so I'm going to take. I've been giving you something. It's almost like the stereotypical like the drug dealer who gives you your first tries free. Like here's some stuff that makes your life really good. But as soon as I take it away, then you're suffering, and now you're going to give me something. So it's very manipulative. And we have seen some manipulative mermaids in the past. Animala, I think was a pretty good example. And I'm sure there's some other ones. But I don't know. I don't know. I was thinking of that as this sort of your when when if you go back in human history to a time when people had more of an animistic belief, the spirits of the waters and the spirits of the fish and all that, you would propitiate, you would ask the spirits to support you. And if something went bad, then you would have to like make amends. You'd have to make some kind of a offering or some kind of you'd give to receive, and there was a reciprocity there. And you see that same kind of pattern with the fisherman in that he's doing well and he's able to turn what he goes to nature, he gets something, he gathers it, he brings it in, he brings it to account, some sort of worldly authority, and he gets paid for it. He's employed. And so that he's taking from nature's bounty and he's receiving employment for what he gets from nature. And then nature kind of takes it away. And in order to get it back, he has to make a deal with these sort of nature spirits. But then there's this expectation that he can break that deal by appealing to the higher authority of the church.
Mm.
By getting the child. If the child is baptized, then the mermaid can't take him.
Hmm.
Although we find out that's not entirely true later in the story.
Mm.
But it seems to work well enough that the mermaid doesn't take him when he's a child.
Hmm.
And it feels like manipulation and counter manipulation and bad faith dealing on both sides. And I don't know. It's an interesting way to start the tale.
Yeah, yeah, sort of like world power negotiations or something like that, where it's not negotiations between two businesses that are of sort of equal power in like a stable, law-abiding with strong laws society. It's more sort of, I think of it sort of like great power negotiations or something. It's sort of, there's negotiations, there's agreements, but there's also a larger kind of context of a physical reality.
Hmm. Hmm.
I thought, yeah, you could, yeah, it's kind of, yeah, what she does is manipulation, the mermaid. But I thought of it as just sort of, so you're looking at the sea, and this comes up in other tales too, where it's just sort of the way she acts is like a personification of the dual nature of nature, that it giveth and it taketh away. It, provides bounty, and then you're having a festival and you love it, and then there's a famine, and then you are facing starvation, and so yeah, it's this sort of this light and dark sort of just side of nature that I thought the mermaid shows here and later on and everything.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's interesting. It does kind of um like you don't expect nature to be fair in that way. Nature is a little more chaotic and
Yeah.
um uncontrollable in that sense. Um and I wonder, it makes me wonder about sort of the process at the end with the wife, where she gets turned into a dragon. But we'll talk about that when we get there. I think I'm picking up on like sort of an echo to the process, sort of the purification process at the end. But we'll get there. Um,
Yeah, that's very
so
interesting.
yeah. Um, so what did you think about like he he becomes a priest, but he's unable to do his first mass, and so because he still belongs to the mermaid. So something there is still like there's still a relationship there, even though he's been baptized and the mermaid hasn't taken him. He still somehow belongs to them, and he the mermaid isn't described as coming in and stopping his
Mm,
mass. So it's not a direct assault kind of a, you know, you're
mm.
mine. But there is something sort of blocking his connection to God. Oh, also
Yeah.
I looked up Lucas, and it means light bringer. So we've already
Oh,
got
great.
kind of like a Christ figure, like a redemptive um vibe going on with the main character.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. And then he becomes a Cooper. So I don't know, what if you had any thoughts about failed priest turned Cooper.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to look that one up.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I mean, I thought with him, when he becomes a priest and he's not able to perform his duties, I thought that just showed the simple truth of the agreement that the fisherman made with the mermaid. He can't just, yeah, he tried to sort of change the interpretation of the wording of the contract, whatever you want to say. He's trying to get out of it. He's trying to squirm out of it, but he can't. And that's sort
Mm,
of the relationship we have with nature. If there is some kind of personification of nature that we can bargain with, if you make an agreement with that, that's for real. I mean, you can't
hmm.
just try to use your human words and kind of, oh, we're going to do this little thing, and then we'll be free from it. I think it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, yeah. Reminiscent of our pre-recording conversation. It's like trying to like think your way out of a trauma response. Like you can maybe mitigate it, you can maybe sort of work around it and have your life still function with it there. But if you don't attend to the sort of more natural updwellings of whatever the agreement is that's going on in your system, you end up kind of unable to perform mass even if you're a priest.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that he was a Cooper, um, because nature, in this case, being painted as a mermaid, being painted as sort of water, and he's
Mm.
building these containers for water.
Yeah.
It's just this neat little echo. I'm sure I could probably unpack that a little more deeply, but um, yeah, I just thought it was pretty cool because it's one little line that he's a Cooper. Like it's not part of the story where described as building barrels and doing all this stuff. But
Yeah.
just that one little detail like expands the symbology of the story so much more.
Yeah, I really like those little details too. And yeah, I thought just kind of like you, he contains liquid in a kind of stable, reliable container. He's able to make a living from that. He travels around sort of helping people sort of master nature in some way to the use of human beings. So seems natural that he would kind of have that relation. He would have a relationship to nature, and it would be trying to master it in some way, especially
Hmm.
since it has such a heavy hand over his whole destiny.
Yeah, yeah. And then actually that's a great like segue into the four animals because he goes from trying to be a priest, which is very like, upward oriented towards God, to sort of going out into the world. So he can't ascend quite yet. He can't, reach the
Yeah.
happy ending of being a priest. So he goes out into the world and he gets a trade, and then he meets these animals, which is, as I see it, is like he's getting in touch with his instincts. There
Hmm.
are these things inside of him that are fighting each other.
Hmm.
They're trying to decide how to divvy up a horse, which is probably one of the most civilized of the animals, at least in the story,
That's what I was
you know.
thinking.
And so they're trying to like, chop it up, and he comes through and he sort of counter to the unjust nature that we were talking about. He comes through and is like, okay, here's how you do it fairly. Like the big animal gets the big bits, the littler animals get the bits that are better for them. I'm not sure about the ant in the head, but ants lead anything, and I don't know what you do with a horse head anyway. Maybe there's something more to that'll reveal itself in time, but I just thought it was kind of funny. But you see him sort of like he comes in as sort of the civilizing force or the moral balancing force into this natural conflict. He resolves it, and everybody gets in their right place. And then those forces that were at war now are become his friends. They owe him a debt, and he can now call upon their powers. So it's very shamanic in that way. Like he's made a deal with the bear spirit and the fox spirit and the ant spirit and the falcon spirit, and he's able to use all of those to he uses each of them at least once in the story to like forward his adventure. And I just think that that's sort of like if we want to talk about the mermaid as the deal with the mermaid as a deal with nature that goes unresolved, that will leave a conflict inside yourself. And here he begins to start making amends with that conflict, not with the mermaid, but just with nature in general. And so he gains power thereby and is able to be more effective in the world.
Yeah, yeah, I thought pretty much along the same lines, and just looking at it in terms of his development. So he can't become a priest, but then he goes into another way, and then maybe he descends or he goes laterally, but he is kind of ascending in some way, get and in a more sort of primitive way, getting in touch with his uh he does something more humble, I should say, with becoming a cask and tub maker, the cooper. And then yeah, he goes on and he's traveling, he's open to everything, he's going forward. Even though he couldn't go up, he's going forward. And then yes, yeah, getting in touch with himself, getting in touch with deep nature and animals of the forest. There's nature of the sea here, but now he goes sort of the opposite way deep into the forest, and he's getting strength from that. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah. The forest is like because they can both be symbols of the unconscious. The obviously the water, the thing that you have to like kind of dive into. But the forest also you can wander into and get lost and have no idea where you are and suddenly come upon this thing and it's a monster, it's a castle, it's an abandoned castle, it's a giant's camp, it's whatever it is. It's always in the forest.
yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I hadn't thought of them as being forest creatures, but sort of things that are inherent to that sort of other world, that sort of nature world, or that unconscious space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and he helps them out and they express their gratitude. This is somehow different from the way that his father was with the mermaid. It's it's more open. It's more, well, I'm using the word natural too much, but it's more open. It's less transactional, or especially in that it's less transactional in that he he did what he wanted to, that's in his power, that helps them truly, and then they express gratitude, and then that helps him truly. And I think it's funny that he laughs at the end of that. It's like he's exulting in his power. He leveled up in some way. It's this burst of the expression of the soul at this
Mhm.
sort of coming into touch with and gathering up, and these forces.
Yeah, yeah. I was struck by that line too, because again, one little line, but it has such an impact. Um, and I hadn't really realized this until we were talking about it again before the cameras went on. But the thing I was mentioning to you about the memory reconsolidation as sort of the underlying neurobiology of why most therapy works, sort of holding, being able to contact a stuck pattern in our system, hold it as a witness, so not being overly identified with it, but having this sort of witnessing while still feeling the emotions and the panic responses that are in there, and then kind of holding that balance between the two until a third thing comes in that can show why the story that the struggling part is believing isn't true. So it gets new information and it can kind of rewrite its code. And when you go through that process, the way you know you've sort of unlocked that old memory, that's why it's called memory reconsolidation. You've consolidated this memory, you want to open it and reconsolidate it with more up-to-date facts.
Mm,
Uh, when you open it, you will often laugh. You will laugh or you will sigh. The physiological response in the body is one of surprise. So you either like, oh, people talk about aha moments. Like that's exactly
yeah,
what an aha moment is. It doesn't always have to be trauma. It can just be like, oh, I believe this thing about the world, and now I see this new information come in, and I
yeah,
was able to sort of make the connection between the two. And aha, my other understanding was wrong. Whether that's about Archimedes in the tub with the lever or whatever it was in the Eureka story from
nice.
or we're talking about somebody with some kind of trauma response in their system. It's that same laughter. So it's really cool that these German folktales would have picked up on something that this is relatively cutting edge neurobiology as far as I know.
Yeah, yeah, that's brilliant. I'd like to look more into that, or even my sort of original plan was to collect folklore. I did that in college for a class, and that's what started me on this whole journey that sort of I taken up again with the podcast. And yeah, we've got to bookmark that and kind of talk about that more and kind of look into that more about how that sort of, I think we're both sort of interested how things kind of spontaneously come up from people, and and stories and gatherings and all that stuff, not using too
Yeah.
many abstractions, but
Yeah, yeah, just the way all of our systems kind of plug into each other in a
yeah.
beneficial way if we don't get too um I don't know. It can obviously get complicated and go wrong, but it doesn't have to, you know.
Maybe that's one of our big themes of our conversations, is how to guide it the right way, that soul leadership kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. So where were we in the story?
This is
Uh,
so he laughs and he goes
right.
on. He has the powers of the instincts of the bear, the fox, the falcon, and the ant. And I guess he
Oh, he
next he
uses
kind
it
of,
to get rich. That's right.
yeah, basically,
He
yeah,
uses it
yeah,
to rob a bunch of gamblers.
yeah, yeah. Well, maybe we can say they didn't need it or something. That's why they were gambling. I don't know. But
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of to me, it's kind of a heartwarming story in that here's this kid who is sort of out wandering in the world on his own, and he manages to sort of make friends with these animal spirits, these animal natures, whatever you want to call it.
mhm,
And so he's able to use them to his advantage. And
mm,
so he goes from being the sort of lonely wanderer to somebody who has he he gets the food that he needs, the partridges as the fox, and then he enters. So he gets his sort of animal needs met, and then he goes into town and goes to an inn, and he's finding shelter and food and money. So he kind of gets his human needs met with them as well. And so you can see it as sort of like his way of learning how to, instead of being a priest and just appealing to God of like, okay, I have to come to terms with my own life. Okay, I come to terms with these animals. Now they're sort of on my side. How do I use them? Okay, now I can take care of myself on this level. Now I can take care of myself on this level. And he sort of has cleaned up his life to the point where like he could just do that and be a successful human the rest of his life in different ways. He
Hmm.
clearly shows his skill and his talent. But what he does next is goes and like tries to find a wife, tries to better his station in life,
Mm.
um, move into sort of the noble, the atmosphere of the nobility, which
Mm.
I think in fairy tales at least you would see that as just sort of a higher station. I don't know if it's necessarily meant to always be like you're going to be rich and famous. I think it's a little more symbolic of like searching for higher things than just survival. So,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah,
so
and becoming an heir to the throne, he's sort of in a protected place, and after having gained at least some wiliness and I think some prudence and wisdom in life, then he can kind of benefit others and kind of be part of a whole society. Like you were saying, he started off kind of hounded by nature, you know, rejected, but at least surviving, and then goes on and sort of develops and then sort of becomes some kind of leader through his keen sight and through being able, like Odysseus, to be wily to change forms. With not Odysseus does that literally, but with in this story, the Lucas does that literally, changing forms to fit the situation and and make his way forward in the story.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, definitely. I think Odysseus certainly shows signs of shape-shifting, if not literal animal transformations. He is wily. He is described as wily again and again. So I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So then he's sort of made good for himself and is now chasing maybe the good, the true, and the beautiful rather than just survival.
Hmm.
And the beautiful being the princess, as she is described. But I like the description of the king because I think it was this one where the king is described as he's made this vow that whoever wants to inherit my kingdom has to guess which one the middle child is because he's decided the middle child is going to inherit his kingdom. And if you don't guess, you're executed. Um, And then later at the end, after he figures it out, there's a line that says, The king had been regretting his vow for a long time and had been distressed by the bloody end taken by so many innocent suitors. And he was happy to give the hand of his daughter to a successful suitor. So, like, even the king was like, What the hell am I doing, guys? He still does it, I guess, operating under the king's word is law. So when he makes a decree, he has to stick by it in order for his word to have symbolically, metaphorically, the king's word has to be law. So if this is what the law has been, even the king can be upset by it, but he's made the law, so everyone abides by it.
Mm.
Um, you know,
Yeah, it's a little like the fisherman. I mean, not knowing what he was bargaining for
Hmm.
originally,
Yeah, that's
leading to
interesting.
death and everything.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. That's sort of because it would make sense that the king figure would be, if we're speaking psychologically, um, the king figure would be a stand-in for his father, would be a stand-in
Mm.
for like if he's going to be the heir to the king, like he's taking on the masculine leader, the sort of trial run of the masculine leadership or the secondary, he's stepping into that role. And
Hmm.
so, for us as people, when we want to do that, we have to sort of our image of our father is the thing that stands in the way. Our relationship with our
Hmm.
father can sort of stop us from stepping into our own masculine leadership because
Hmm.
the blessings and the failures of our father are the things that we have to step through to get to grow into our own manhood, our own adulthood.
Mm, mm.
And yeah, I really like that comparison of the sort of the bad deal and the regret on both sides. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and I had so yeah, that kind of that thing of sort of having the problem with your birth father or problem because of your birth father, that sort of remind, and then later on going into some type of kingship kind of father relationship. That reminds me of the Iron Shoes, where at the beginning of the story, the gardener's son is like kicked out of home. And then he goes around the world, suffers, gains a marriage, and then he comes back, and then now his father can't recognize him, which is a trope, but also he starts to have a relationship with the king.
Right. Yeah. 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 The sort of the father, the archetype of the father rather than the individual father.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I had forgotten that part of the Iron Shoes that he comes back and isn't even recognized by his father. But I could see that fitting very well in here too, that if the fisherman was at court, he wouldn't recognize his son or something like that.
yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
In this
Yeah.
story, the fisherman father doesn't really come back, right?
I don't
The
think
son.
so. Yeah, he goes off into the world, as soon as he's born, basically, he becomes a priest. Like that's the way the details in the
Yeah.
story. He's born and then he's a priest, and then he can't be a priest, and so he becomes a cooper, and then he goes on an adventure.
Yeah.
And he's out of the house at that point. So mom and dad are long gone.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's not done with sort of the feminine character of his birth, the mermaid, and he
Hmm.
has to wrangle with that in all sorts of ways and risk death and being forgotten and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you have him he sort of steps into his power like we were saying, and then he goes to the ruler archetype to sort of find his match, to find his his missing feminine half. In the platonic sense that we're all sort of looking for that other half, not so much as in a person, but in ourselves. Um, Although we often confuse the two. But so he's sort of trying to grow himself in that way. And it shows him being ready for it because he turns into the falcon or the hawk, whatever one it is, the bird, and he goes into the garden and he's put into a golden cage. And when he turns back into a human, he's dressed royally, he's dressed well. So
Mm,
there's some sort of a recognition of him as like through his skill, he's made his way into the castle. And when he reveals himself in his true form, he is shown to be worthy of the castle. He's not
mm,
in, you would expect somebody who's been wandering and sleeping in inns behind the counter and like uproaring gamblers and stealing their money. Like
mm,
this dude's probably a little raggedy looking.
mm,
But here, when he reveals himself to the princess, he's made ready to marry the princess. And so there's no purification process of him that needs to happen. But there's still this split between like the feminine half that is his wife, that is the princess, and the sort of natural wild feminine of the mermaid, of whatever that deal was.
mm,
Um and to the point where the mermaid gets him because he goes off hunting and does not listen to his wife's premonitions. So she has this intuition. The feminine element has this intuition of
mm,
to be careful, and he says, "No, I'm going to go anyway."
mm,
Um, and and then he's captured by the sort of the mermaid, the sort of I guess the chthonic feminine, the darker under
mm,
nature, kind of drags him down
mm,
under the water. So he's lost under the water, but the bargain is the contract that the father made is now fulfilled, which is
mhm,
interesting. So it doesn't necessarily mean that what he did was wrong because in the end, they say they were, they now that they're free of the mermaid contract, the curse or whatever, they're able to go. They can finally get their happily ever after. So he couldn't get it from the church. He couldn't even get it getting married to the princess. He had to at least partially fulfill that contract. He had to connect in some way with this part under the water that he owed a debt to.
Yeah.
Even if his wife was telling him, no, no, don't go. It's going to be dangerous. Like he still had to kind of go. I mean, we don't hear much about it, but that sounds like a very Joseph Campbell hero's journey into the underworld kind of a thing. And you come back and you've got the boon for your society, or in the very least, you're freed of your curse.
Yeah, I agree. And also, when he goes off before he's captured by the mermaid in the stream, he also ignores his mother's warning to lifelong warning, which happens in other stories too that are like this. She warns the child not to go to where he's in danger of being captured by the mermaid. So he ignores his current feminine wife and also his past benevolent sort of safety feminine, the mother, to yeah, like you're saying, to go off into the hero's journey down into the depths and everything. And yeah, and then he does get captured.
Yeah, that's interesting. I forgot about that line about his mom, but that makes a lot of sense because if you are like if you are getting in touch with the sort of buried parts of yourself, um, but as a man, if you're getting in touch with the feminine parts of yourself, like you're going to have to kind of free them from the mother projection. Like you're going to have to differentiate between the two of those things.
Mm,
Otherwise, you're just going to constantly be looking for sort of mothering from your partner instead of being kind of equals, you know?
mm,
Um, and it's interesting because you see the princess be pretty wily too, in that she goes down and she's grieving, she's genuinely expressing her emotion, and the
mm,
mermaid comes out, and the mermaid is not um antagonistic to the princess. The
mm.
mermaid isn't like blaming her, isn't attacking her, anything like that. The mermaid just like, hey, don't worry, like your husband's fine. He's under the water, he's chilling, like I haven't eaten him,
Yeah,
whatever it
and she
is.
reassures her, and it's
Yeah,
a
so
conversation.
there's a friendliness there. Um, and then the princess gives parts of herself to the mermaid. So
Mm,
she starts with the comb in her hair, the golden comb. So she takes, gold being sort of, I don't know, purity, sort of royalty, sort of high or something. She takes
mm,
something precious and she gives it to nature. She gives it to the natural feminine.
mm,
And she get so that's sort of the combs in her hair. So then she gets to see her husband's head or his eyes or something above the water. Then she gives the ring, which is closer, more. I mean, it's the finger, but it's the body.
mm,
And he's brought up to the point where she can see his torso. And then she gives the slippers, the golden slippers or golden shoes to the mermaid. So she gives like top, middle, and feet all over to the mermaid as like a gift. And I
mm,
wonder if that's actually why the curse gets broken, because nature has been paid finally with something golden.
mm,
Even though he has to escape by turning into a falcon, because mermaids are graspy, gollumy little
mm,
characters in most of these stories. They very, very, very hold on to what they think is theirs.
mm,
You have to escape it wisely,
mm,
um, rather than just being like let go. But yeah, it's just sort of the transformation that the offerings that the princess makes, um, and then the princess turns into a dragon. The mermaid turns the princess into a dragon. So if
mm,
we are talking like evolutions of the feminine archetype in a man, I guess, or at least in general, like she's the wife and she's this mirroring of the mother, like you were pointing out, but then she sacrifices certain parts to the more wild feminine, and then the wild feminine comes into her and she turns into this dragon.
mm,
Um, and so, which when you're processing any kind of mother wound, like you'll often have to process like the devouring mother, the part of your mother that needed you to be a certain way so that you fit her ideal of what a child should be. I think that happens to a lot of people. It's not really the mother's fault. It's just part of growing up as a human being.
Yeah.
But that is like a common mother wound that the mother is a dragon, and oh, we're all afraid of her. I mean, Iron John, the Iron John story. In order to free Iron John, in order to free the wild man, the prince has to go steal the key from his mother. Like
Mm,
there's some sort of a like you have to take that power away from your mother, whether she's holding a key to your wildness or her wildness is representing a dragon that's going to eat you,
mm,
or the stereotypical dragon that's guarding the princess. You have to confront the dragon
mm,
to rescue your feminine nature. You have to confront the devouring feminine nature. It's kind of that sort of mirroring goes on in a lot of fairy tales, and you see it here where the princess gets turned into a dragon. But because the guy's already done so much work, we get this sort of magical magician guy that just runs her through the process of the three ovens, and she's kind of done. So
yeah, that was a funny ending. Just the king sends out word, and then it's I don't know, maybe that's a symbol that through the Cooper's help, everything's kind of healthy now, and so the king sends out word, and then yes, the right magician comes along, and it's just you have to suffer through these three repetitive trials, and you have to have it burned off. Of course, there's fire burning off water, heat, and water, but yeah, it just kind of works out at the end there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It feels like I don't know. It feels both kind of like Deus Ex Machina, like, oh, did they just pull out something
Yeah.
magical at the but it also feels kind of earned because he's done so much work
Yeah.
at this point, and there's something about the final process being a little more automatic that kind of still rings true for me because he's kind of paid up front to be ready for this thing, so when it happens it just sort of like the natural system of the like you said, he sort of cleaned up the kingdom or whatever, so that the social system is able to sort of help process this feminine energy back into, um instead of keeping them separate between sort of the mother wife and the wild mermaid. You can kind of join them together. And they probably had a pretty good marriage after that, I would assume. um
Yeah. Yeah. I thought, yeah, he's basically paid his debt. I mean, he's lived under this curse his whole life, and he does actually sacrifice himself to sort of maybe almost like Jesus going into hell. It's he sacrifices, he does go into the underworld. And then yes, because of all the investments, all the wisdom he's had, they kind of save him. The princess as part of her kingdom, and the king as part of his kingdom, and the whole kingdom with the proclamation. And then the magician comes, and you could maybe talk about that sort of like bringing back the god, or the something like that, that he was ignored at the beginning of the story by because he was cursed from below. um, Another thing I thought about his sort of the recompense, or the the dragon and everything at the end, all the chaos that happens at the end of the story when he finally does go down into the depths of the stream. It makes sense because in the story to me, because he had skipped over that part. He was always destined to go and pay his father's debt, to always be claim. Nature, once it claims somebody, you can't just sort of do some man's magic and sort of just, oh, he's just gonna we're just gonna pretend that doesn't exist, and he's just gonna be a priest or something like that. Like it really has to come full circle. And there was a chance of that happening when he was when he approached the kingdom, there's all these people dying. He has this impossible task, but then he uses his magic instincts to just fly over all that. He becomes a falcon. He goes over the deep moat and the wall of the castle into the garden. He kind of like skips a lot of steps, a lot of suffering, and a lot of trials, and just goes straight into there, and then is just picked up by the princess. She brings him up to her room, and he's given the golden cage and the nice royal garments and whatnot. So he kind of skipped over that part. So the curse was still hanging over him. He still needed to go through the trials, and then that's what happens later on when he goes hunting, and his you could say like his unconscious is kind of still knowing that he's incomplete in that way. He still needs to pay his debt to chaos, to nature. So
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I had actually forgotten the the sort of state of the kingdom before he arrived. But yeah, everyone was dying, everybody was in mourning, and
yeah,
he resolves that. But then also I really like you point out that he goes over the moat. And again, that's avoiding the water.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, talking about little details again. The story mentions it's a deep moat. I mean, why would they? It's funny that they have that little detail, but it makes you think of the depths of where the mermaid is lurking, you know?
Exactly. I'm sure the mermaid's in the moat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anything else you thought about this story? I thought this was very good. I'm glad you chose this one.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it. I like them when they have more complications. Like I
Yeah.
think I mentioned it a bit ago, but like, you would expect most fairy tales when he marries the princess, that's the end of the story. But
Yeah.
here we have like the whole kind of third act to it, or fourth act, or whatever it is, with him actually finishing the bargain and fulfilling the contract. Um, and also sort of the feminine element helping to process whatever it was that was stuck there, sort of her turning into a dragon, sort of going through the alchemical heating and cooling and heating and cooling and heating and cooling, sort of stereotypical purification process, um, is I think really necessary for this story. So that was kind of why I picked it. It felt fuller and richer. Yeah. I don't know if I have
Yeah.
anything else to say about it though.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said. I don't have anything else by way of interpretation to say, but I just wanted to mention that this is a lot like the story of the Grimm brothers story, The King of the Golden Mountain,
Hmm.
where the father is a merchant who sends ships off to sea, and then he loses everything, and then he has to make a bargain with this magical being that suddenly appears like a Mephistopheles or demon type character, and the little dwarf bargains with him to get the first thing that he sees when he comes home. And that's something that he doesn't know, but he agrees to, thinking he does know. So when he comes home, his little boy like jumps into his arms or something like that. Little
Hmm.
reminiscent of King Midas kind of having his daughter jump up, and he grabs her and she turns into gold in the myth.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But
Oh,
yeah.
that's crazy. I forgot about. Yeah, no, that's great. Did you have more to say? I don't want to, but
Oh,
I
not much. It's just that it's interesting to see these various parallels in other stories, similar types of interactions or forces, but taking different form. There being a dwarf instead of the merchant, excuse me, instead of the mermaid, in that other story, or it's involving the sea, but he's a merchant, but it's still bounty from the sea. It's that kind of idea. And I just wanted, without analyzing it, just wanted to point out that the King of the Golden Mountain, though, ends very, very differently. It sort of ends like the scorned princess in the Schonwerth tales,
mm,
where he ends up the son ends up kind of not being taken over by the unknowing sort of bad bargain that his father had made with nature, with the sea, or something like that, but he in this other tale, he ends up kind of becoming this tyrannical lord.
Oh
So very,
wow.
very different than this tale.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
have to check that out. Did you do that one with LL? I think I saw it
Yeah.
on the thread. Yeah,
Yeah, we
I'll have
did a
to
little
check it
while
out.
ago.
Nice, nice, nice. I'll have to check that one out. It reminds me also of the Handless Maiden. I don't know if you've I think that's a Grimm's Brothers fairy tale. I've heard of it from Marion Woodman, the Jungian the student the Jungian analyst, but it's same thing. The miller makes a deal with the devil for whatever it is that's behind the mill. And he thinks the devil means the old apple tree, but when he goes home, he finds out that's where his daughter was. And so the devil comes for the daughter, and can't take her because she's too pious. Um, and then he has her hands chopped off so that she can't fight him off. But then her tears, because she's so pious, her tears are like holy water, and they wash down over her, and he still can't approach. And so at that point, he's the deal with the devil is done. Like she manages to sort of holy water him out of the picture, and then she has to deal with the fact that she lost her hands to it, to the devil, and then that the fairy tale kind of goes on from there. But again, another parent making deals that they don't know exactly what it is, but they still agree to it. You
Yeah.
know, sort of the arrogance there, the sort of like, oh, it'll be fine. I can get away with it. And
Yeah.
being told no, you can't. It always comes to.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not a parent, but I would wonder. I mean, so first of all, there's a realistic aspect to that. But second, I would wonder that's kind of something that you have to do as a parent. You just don't know what the consequences are always going to be, and you have to take actions. But there's just, there's so much just chaos out there that you don't know what exactly is going to happen.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing was, and me and LL did that story too, by the way, like kind of a long time ago, the
Hmm.
girl without the hands.
Oh,
Um,
right, right.
but yeah, she has to make her way out into the world after she doesn't have hands, and but she's protected by her piety. In The King of the Golden Mountain, the boy is he like steps up and negotiates with the dwarf, and he shows himself to be like a master negotiator where he's bargaining with this guy and wearing him down for like hours at the age of 17 or something like that. And
Oh,
so he
wow.
has this power of the mind, but then yes, he's not pious, and he ends up kind of becoming, yeah, tyrannical.
Huh. Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. That sounds pretty fascinating as far as like how what slope he slides down there. Yeah. Oh, what was I? I was going to say something. Oh, yeah. It's interesting. What you were pointing about like that's kind of just the way it goes for parents. I think that's similar to what I was pointing to when I was talking about like the devouring mother. And I have this theory that we like it's kind of built into the human experience that we will be born incomplete or struggle, still trying to figure out who we are, as opposed to a lot of animals that are born kind of ready to just go. Horses will
Yeah.
get up and run like right out of the womb.
Yeah.
Humans have a harder time with that. I think we're maybe born a little prematurely because our heads are so big. But
Mm,
we're born and there's no way to tell as a parent, especially as a new parent, but even if you second and third kid, there's no way to tell like who this being is that you are now in charge of. And
that's right. Yeah.
there's no way to tell like the deals with your own devils that you have made that get, the parents, the ancestral trauma, the stuff that gets passed down generation to generation. If your parents relate to anger a certain way, you will relate to anger a certain way. And then you as you're growing up, you have to deal with the fact that, oh, I learned this from my parents and it's unhealthy and that's theirs, but I've developed these mechanisms from that and I have to take responsibility for that. And yeah, I think I'd never thought of the sort of irresponsible fairy tale parents as just being a metaphor for what it's like to be a parent when you don't know how to raise a child, a specific child, this specific being's
Yeah.
needs. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. I like this. One reason I like these fairy tales is they don't don't BS you very much. It's kind of funny to say that because they're full of magical beings and everything, but it's kind of a realistic kind of magic. It's not wishful thinking so much. I mean, there's fantastical elements of them, but they're not really that fantasy. They're still pretty grounded in some way the patterns of human life.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that like you were talking about Von Schönwerth at the beginning, and I think even the Grimms maybe originally had it be a lot darker and then they got cleaned up. But like it's that earthiness, it's that creepiness, it's that like death and destruction and that weaves its way through these stories that give them the like the more honest feeling, I think,
Yeah.
because like life does have its sufferings,
Yeah.
whether it's because the mermaids took our fish away or because of something else, it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last thing I was thinking of, I guess we didn't talk much about sacrifice, sort of this, because this
Mm.
story reminds me of actually a Korean version of Cinderella that I once collected as a folk tale, actually from my own mother. Um,
Oh.
but in that version, so it's a seaside town and nobody's catching any fish, and they find out it's because the sea god wants a wife, wants a virgin sacrifice. So there's this girl there who has a blind father. He can't catch any fish, or he's sort of, I don't mean this in like a judgmental way, just sort of useless for the town and for himself. He's not able to catch any fish for real. And she ends up being sacrificed to the sea god and living down there. And then of course the bounty comes back up. But we've sort of talked about it, this thing, the fisherman with the negotiation and everything. But there's also that aspect of just um, you really have to give something up in life. You have to offer something real in life, or at least in these stories. I don't know. We can talk about how realistic that is, but it seems to be something in human psychology, at least, that you have to give up something real. He has to, the fisherman thinks he's just going to give up some, not a big deal, but no, that's not how it works. You have to offer your child. You have to offer vitality to the nature. And based on Schonwerth's note at the beginning of the story, that seems to be in the nature of the mermaids themselves, that they look for handsome men. So they're trying to take the cream of the crop, the beautiful and the vital, and they live off of that. They're sort of like vampires or sort of like succubi that sort of maintain this beautiful vitality because of the what they sort of suck out of, what they sort of take out of humanity.
Mm, Yeah. 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 Um, yeah, I like that. I like that idea of a sacrifice. I definitely think that that's something that's required. I don't know how much I like I mean, the fairy tale definitely depicts the mermaids that way of the sort of vampiric nature like you're talking about. But if we're talking about natural forces and having to pay for things up front,
Mm,
whether through suffering or something else, like I think there's got to be something genuine there that isn't vampiric. So sort of
mm,
painting the mermaids in this way feels a little um out of alignment with how I would want to relate to nature spirits myself, maybe if I
mm,
were to, to not that I know any mermaids or anything, but just that idea of like if there are forces greater than myself that I have to work with or that do require sacrifices from me, I I would want it to just be like an honest bargain,
mm,
like, okay, I'm willing to do this. This is what you need. This will work out. This will, divvy up the horse properly so everybody's happy. Like, cool, I'll do that. That's great. And
mm,
then I'll go on my way. And if you want to teach me how to turn into animals, great. I'll take that too.
mm,
I like that kind of relationship with the spirits. I don't particularly like the ones where it's like adversarial in that way.
mm,
And I don't know, maybe there are spirits that are adversarial, but I would be very cautious myself um, assuming that it would work that way just because our culture is so indoctrinated against nature and against taking care of nature and sort of, it's almost like saying like, global warming is happening because we haven't sacrificed our children to the sea gods. It's like, well, you know, um, I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but the punishment there is not so direct, and it's what it's asking for is not so vampiric. I think it's asking for something a little cleaner of an
Mm,
exchange. I like to trust that nature is cleaner in that way,
mm,
or the natural spirits or whatever.
yeah. Yeah, it's different ways of looking at it. I guess I see the usefulness of it in just there's some things that you have to be careful of. So,
Mm,
um, if you're using these stories to teach people in general, you're sort of training their cognition in some general way and their emotions. And there are certain things in life that probably or I could see the usefulness of sort of being scared of. And so if you think of there being an antagonistic aspect to nature, then you'll be more careful of it than if you view everything as in terms of harmony.
hmm
Um, but anyway, it's just yeah, it's a certain it seems like part of a certain worldview that could work. Um, but for me,
Yeah.
I also, yeah, see some maybe downside to that, or for myself, I don't have that sort of antagonistic idea. Although what you pointed out as looking at this from the perspective of human nature, in the in society, it seems to it it seems to work. Although
Yeah.
I also haven't had to live out in nature, so I haven't had to worry about like breaking my leg out in the middle of nowhere and dying because of that, because I wasn't watching out for 1 second or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I have a sheltered and privileged life and don't have much of a relationship with the wilder forms of nature, externally or internally. But I like your refinement, because if we are talking internally, there are forces inside of us that we can't just trust, that we have to be watchful of and be attentive to kind of all the time. And really, like, I don't want to say that they're evil in that like they just need to go away, but evil can definitely come of them due
Mm,
to our lack of awareness,
mm,
due to our not really pay, if the father in that moment had been aware and been like, well, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know that I have, so I don't know that I'm willing to offer that to you. Is there something else I could do? Like if he was that self-aware of how bad the bargain might turn out for him, he might have, avoided the whole story. Um,
mm,
so being cautious in that way is, I think your point of sort of refining it in that direction. I think that's a good point. Yeah.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it seems useful in some way, which seems like what these folk tales are kind of providing. They're some sort of entertainment and maybe even some sort of elenchus or sort of like change, relieving of tension and changing your mind in some way, getting a mythos kind of shared among groups of people in a culture. And it seems primarily like you entertainment that is useful. So I would just wonder what the use of it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know that teaching people things or trying to teach people things, often we learn better from stories than we do from direct, idea to idea instruction. When it's told within a story, there's more context for our brain to sort of grapple with the idea as a whole. Whereas when it's just told as a statement of scientific or philosophical fact, it doesn't necessarily integrate with as many parts of ourselves. So I think stories are more powerful that way.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about with this story or compare it to?
No, I don't think so. I think that feels good, man. Yeah, we got the whole thing out and went a couple other places too. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
good.
well, thanks. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay.
Likewise.
Take care.